Hi there, and welcome to Flip the Script Season 1, Episode 17, Meeting Handoff. How to pass a meeting from an SDR to an AE without making your prospect feel like it was a bait and switch. My name is Becc Holland. I'm the CEO and founder of Flip the Script. Before we dive in here, if you do me a quick favor, go to flipthescript.co and make sure you download the deck so you can follow along. Once you've done that, let's jump in. So let's start off with a little bit of perspective. There are 4 different players in this game. Number 1, you have the prospect. Number 2, you have the SDR leader. Number 3, you have the account executive. And number 4, you have the SDR. And all 4 have different perspectives and different needs in the game. So let's start with the prospect. Your prospect's experience is that an SDR has been calling into them for, let's say, 12 touch points. They have been emailing this person, they've been calling this person, they finally get a hold of the prospect, and the prospect says, okay, uncle, I will meet with you. I will look at your product. So they come into this meeting kind of respecting the SDR of like, this person really put some investment, this person knew who they were, this person sent them a bunch of emails, and they're kind of excited to meet the SDR and typically, say something really nice about them in front of their boss. They come into the meeting, and instead of seeing the SDR that they originally planned on seeing, instead they see someone completely different. So it can be pretty jarring to them in the process of, this person really built rapport with me, this is the person that I really liked, this is the person that I really wanted to talk to and who really earned my time. And instead of talking to this first person, I'm now talking to someone completely different about a product. So sales in large part is built off of relationships and rapport. And so when the prospect comes in, they have a different person that they've never seen before, and this person hasn't built rapport with them. So from the prospect's point of view, typically when I talk to them in the industry, they say sometimes they won't even take the meeting if the SDR isn't on the call, but they certainly want the SDR to be present. So I put a fat check mark here that the prospect typically wants the SDR on the call to at least add context as to why they took it. Now let's go to the SDR leader. The SDR leader's perspective is, my SDRs work really, really hard all day. They book these meetings with these prospects, and they finally get the prospects into the meeting. And as an SDR leader and a former SDR leader myself, it can be time consuming if your SDRs are sitting on all of these appointments. So, quotas are anywhere from 10 to 20 appointments a month. And so we're talking, if they're successful and they hit a full quota, let's take the 20, for instance, there are 20 meetings that they have to sit in on per month where they are listening to a demo. So a couple are really, really good, but doing 20 during a month, you just lost 20 work hours from your SDR. They do learn a little bit, they get to know the prospect, etc., but it can be seen as a quote unquote waste of time if my SDR is spending every single call, intro discovery call, spending their time on that call just to make the prospect happy. So typically when I talk to SDR leaders, they don't love it if their SDR is going to be a part of the call. Now let's transition to the account executive. The account executive is the person that is jumping on the call, they're closing the deal, and from their perspective, at least from what I've heard when I've talked to AEs in the past, they think that it's a little bit awkward if the SDR jumps in the call. They're scared that they're going to talk too much, talk too little. They might take away from the call. They might take over the mic. Their biggest fear is that the SDR is going to start to pitch and the account executive can't really rein it in and really govern the call, which is what the account executive is there for. Being an SDR is exciting because it's an intro level role. And so people often get really, really excited about their product and they want to start pitching. And so an account executive, it's an unknown if the SDR is sitting on the call. So typically when I talk to AEs, they don't want the SDR to be on the call because they want to really take the reins from there and govern how the call is going. And then finally, you have the SDR. SDRs typically love being on these calls. They get to meet the prospect that they hunted into forever. They kind of have a parasocial emotional attachment to the person because they hunted after this person for so long. They read so many articles about this person. And in a lot of case scenarios, this is someone that they really want to connect with. This is someone they look up to and someone they admire. This is, I'll take Eric Gilpin over at Upwork, for instance. He's a senior vice president. And I have, spent some time prospecting into him. And whenever he jumps on the call, I really, really want to jump on the call with him. I want to at least meet him and say hi. But also the SDR loves to hear how the demo goes. Was this a quality conversation? Was this one that was a really good meeting? Can I add into this conversation, and can I ultimately meet the prospect? SDRs, one of the things that they don't have enough of is mentorship and a network at this stage of the game typically. Typically, someone doesn't walk in out of college into their career and have a big fat network. That's just not how it works. And so SDRs really want to network and meet these higher up people, so that in the future, if they ever need anything or if they need a mentor along the way, that can be super invaluable. So the SDR does want to jump on the call, typically from when I've worked with them. So who's right? You've got your prospect that wants the SDR on the call, the SDR leader that doesn't. You've got the account executive that doesn't want them on the call, and the SDR that does. So we're about 50-50 split right down the middle. So what is an option? Because we need to find an option that basically the prospect gets to see the SDR, the account, and doesn't feel bait and switched. The account executive doesn't feel like they're overrun during the call. The SDR leader doesn't spend a lot of SDR time, on every single call that they have, and that the SDR still gets some level of exposure to the appointments that they've set. So what's the solution? So in the past, I'm going to go through 3 parts of this process and then example of the kinds of emails that I'm sending to complete this process so that you have a full deck from end to end. So let's start with the 3 parts of the process that I've deployed in the past. Number 1, I have the SDR send over the calendar invite. So they're talking to the prospect. The prospect has just agreed to a meeting. The SDR is really, really excited. And they say, hey, I'm going to send over a calendar invite to earmark our time. Let me know if there's anything in the meantime, let me know if I can be of any help in the meantime. So they send over the calendar invite. And the first step is I would wait for your prospect to accept that calendar invite. So if you're an SDR out there, it's not over till it's over, right? So I would send over that calendar invite. If you're on the phone with them, I'd get them to accept on the phone if you can. But if not, you want to wait until your prospect has basically agreed that they are actually going to jump on that call. The second step is you want to send a follow-up email to your prospect. And the goal of the follow-up email is essentially you want to tell your prospect that you're really, really excited. You want to reaffirm to them that you're meeting and what time. You want to reaffirm the agenda. And then lastly, you guessed it, you want to let them know that an account executive is going to be on the call. So some people know the game. They know the SDR AE pass off and it's totally fine. They're waiting for the account executive. But some people don't know what that process is like. Not everyone is in B2B SaaS, Techyville, Jack Dorsey, etc. Some people don't know that a different person's going to be on the call. And it can be pretty jarring to your prospect if all of a sudden a different person's sitting on the call and all of a sudden they feel like they were kind of had a little bit and bait and switched. So you want to send a follow-up email and you want to make them aware that an account executive is going to be on the call, but you don't want to make them have to send you an email back to confirm that that's okay. So we're going to do it in a very specific tone to where you get your prospect aware of what to expect, but you also don't make them send a question email, back if it's okay, so that you can have both goals achieved. The third step is going to be you're going to base your attendance for your SDR, whether they do actually attend the meeting or not, on the priority of the meeting. We can break down some instances of when a meeting is high priority and when I've had my SDRs jump on in the past. But basically, these are the 3 steps that I have the SDR send over a calendar invite, wait for the prospect to accept the invite, then send a follow-up email to the prospect, letting them know that if it's okay with them, that an account executive is going to jump on the call to better govern the call. And then in some cases, I'm going to have the SDR jump on the call. And in some cases, I'm not going to have them jump on the call. So let's go through that in a little bit more detail. Let's start with the follow-up email. The follow-up email has 3 different parts. So I call it an excited sandwich, is what I call it. So the first part, you're going to thank your prospect for taking the call. You're going to say, hey, hey, Mike, I'm really excited, looking forward to chatting with you Tuesday at 2, and thanks again for the time. So the point of this line is basically you're reaffirming to your prospect that you're excited to meet them, that you're really, really thankful and grateful that they're giving you the opportunity, and you're reaffirming that the time is Tuesday at 2. The second piece is the most crucial piece. You're going to give them a heads up of who to expect on the call. So the language that I use is typically very specific because if I'm calling into someone who's really, really high up, or I'm calling into a director or manager, if I'm calling into anyone on the planet Earth, the one thing that they don't have enough of is time. So you want to make sure that you don't request a response, that there is no need to respond for your prospect, but you also are setting the stage for the call. So you would say, if it's okay, I'd like to include the account executive's name. I'd like to include Sarah on the call. They're really adept in our platform and can help you navigate the conversation. So basically, you're asking for permission here, but you're not making them respond. You're saying, if it's okay with you, and asking permission to do something. The smaller the task that you basically portray to your prospect, that you are looking for approval, that you are looking for some kind of permission-based ask, the more attractive your prospecting is, because it shows a little bit of a humility, and it shows a little bit that you are focusing on the prospect and their user experience and making sure that everything is okay for them. Let me tell you a little bit of a story. I am filming this week all of season 1, and we're doing season 2 next week for all of these different sessions. And the crew has been incredible, shout out to them, about finding every single little detail that I need. So they'll say, hey, your shirt's a little bit like this, or you have a flyaway hair. And there was one day, 2 days ago, where basically I had left my computer in the back of the room. And all of a sudden, I come back to my computer a couple hours later, and I knew that it didn't have charge. I opened the computer, and all of a sudden I had 100% charge. So I asked a couple of questions, and one of the guys had plugged in my computer without me even asking. So all of a sudden I had a fully charged computer, and I didn't even have to worry about it. So that level of detail communicates to someone that you care and that you've taken care of things behind the scenes, and shows an insatiable amount of respect, and is a super attractive way to sell. So you want to communicate to your prospect that you have the same level of detail. That if it's okay with them, you want to include account executive, but it's very, very attractive, respectful behavior to make sure that it's okay with someone if you go ahead and do something. So if it's okay with you, I want to include, Sarah on the call. They're really adept in the platform and can help navigate the conversation. Step number 3 is you want to, again, the exciting sandwich, the 2 pieces of bread are excitement. So you want to communicate to your prospect that you're really excited, about the follow-up time. So step 3, I usually say either way, excited to connect, appreciate you giving us a shot, and let me know if I can be of any help in the meantime. So you want to communicate to your prospect that basically there's no response needed, but you do want to set the stage in the middle of the call that there's going to be someone else in the call, so it's not super jarring for them. So now we know what the follow-up email looks like, but which meetings do I attend? If I'm an SDR, I want to attend all of them. If I'm an SDR leader, I don't want them to attend any of them. So I typically break it down into 2 different buckets. If it's a high priority deal, then I have the SDR attend. And if it's a low priority deal, I don't have them attend. So what are the differences between those 2? That you can set the stage, full disclosure, of anything that you think is high priority. So that's up to you as a leader, or that's up to you, as a sales leader or SDR leader. You can really define and dictate for your SDRs or for your team which deals are high priority, but I typically base them on the following 4 variables. If this is a super high value deal, meaning you have hung into enterprise or strategic, etc., and you have really, focused on this company, this is a really, really good win, then I would have the SDR join the call. So, from the prospect's perspective, they want the person on the call. Enterprise usually wants a little more catering, because they're a bigger company, and the SDR wants to meet someone that's in that role. The third type of a high priority deal is when the SDR has been hunting this person for a while. This is more of an emotional win. There's a lot of different deals whenever you're in sales or sales development, either one, that for some reason you have just been hunting this person for a while, and whenever you finally book the meeting, it's a big deal. And so I do this for my SDRs of if they have mentioned someone over and over and over and over and over. I remember there's a really great example is Ed Calnan over at Seismic, really, really great CRO. There was an SDR who was trying to get a hold of him for a long, long time and finally booked the meeting with him and was so excited whenever he booked the meeting. So I said, go ahead and jump on that call because that one was a really big win for you. And then the fourth kind is when the prospect has attributed the success of the meeting to great SDR effort. Our prospects want to help and want to really give attribution of like, hey, this was a really great prospecting effort. They want to congratulate SDRs. They want to say great job to our sales reps. They want to say, hey, this is a really good effort. They just don't often have the opportunity to, because we're doing all kinds of mass blasts and we're being too aggressive and etc. And so it's kind of rarer to them, at least in my experience, whenever they can say like, hey, that was a great call and that was a great effort. But they remember themselves whenever they were at that stage of their career. And so they want to say like, hey, I know that you're selling knives to me. I used to sell knives door to door all the time. And so let me welcome you in here. You actually had a really, really good pitch. And so all of our prospects, whenever they have that opportunity and whenever an SDR hopefully does a really great job of they personalize their messaging, they picked out something that was really interesting about them, and then they took a meeting because of it, the SDR, I let them jump on the call because I'm like, the prospect is probably going to want to give a shout out to that person because they know how much that means to their boss. So this has happened a myriad of times. I almost want to mention the person's name, but there's someone over at Upwork that did this for a rep. But it really means a lot to the SDR, and it can forge a connection between those two parties of like the SDR all of a sudden has maybe a mentor, you know, someone that they can put in their network, but someone at, you know, minimum case scenario, you want to let your prospect say these great things about the SDR. So you want to include the SDR in the line if this ever happens. If they send back an email that says like, hey, great personalized effort, I will take the call Tuesday at 2. At least just so the SDR can meet the person and say, thank you so much for sending over that email. It really made my day. If they're a low priority meeting, then I would say the SDR doesn't attend. So these meetings can be just your typical average everyday meetings. And again, you can define where this bar is. If you want to let your SDRs jump on every call, that's totally fine. I would still run the AE book of like letting them know that they're on the call. But if you want to limit the amount, then I would just put this criterion a little higher or lower. But if it's a lower priority meeting, let's say, you know, you're selling B2C, or let's say that you're selling SMB, and maybe these SDRs are booking 30 meetings a month and you just don't want them to jump on every call, then I would say, okay, you know, you can jump on half of these because they're high priority, but the other low priority ones, you need to, you know, go ahead and keep working. So what do we do in the meantime whenever the prospect jumps on the call? Because a director at an SMB company and a director at an enterprise company, they're the same value. They are the same worth as a human being, and they have the same buyer journey. So I see something on LinkedIn a lot, which is really interesting to me, where people say, hey, you should personalize to mid-market companies and enterprise companies in these tier 1 accounts, but only just be relevant to the tier 3 accounts. I can't tell you how much I disagree. People are people, and people love it when you value them enough to make something relevant. So from my perspective, you should set the minimum bar of what you want to sell into and then personalize. So if you have to book 20 meetings in SMB, I still think it's faster and more effective to personalize to 100 prospects than to unpersonalize and be just quote unquote relevant, you know, to 500. Personalization and relevance within that bucket, regardless of if it's SMB or mid-market or enterprise, I think is the keys to the kingdom of hooking personalization and relevance. I don't think that people start falling in love or falling out of love with personalization, or they don't want you to focus on them if they work at an SMB company. Actually, my hunch is they might even more so want you to focus on them if they're at SMB companies. So I would set the minimum bar, and then I would personalize for every single account, because I think it's the faster way to book higher quality meetings regardless of the level of the size of deal. So, you know, if that's 30 meetings, 15 meetings, or 10 meetings, all your prospects are just people, you know, so you want to value them and send over a great message, but you also don't want your SDR jumping on every call for one of these meetings. So how do we do that? How do we make our prospect not feel bait and switched? I usually do it with 3 different pieces of the process. I don't have the SDR jump on the call. They send over the email letting the prospect know that the account executive is going to be, if it's okay with them, the account executive is going to jump on the call. The AE jumps on the call and the prospect is there. The AE lets the prospect know that the SDR is tied up. So let's assume that the SDR's name is Karina. So I would say, and my name is Becc, and my prospect name is Eric. So I would say, hey, Eric, actually, thanks so much for jumping on the line. Actually, Karina was going to join us, but she's all tied up right now. So number one, I would tell them, you know, the SDR who was ever responsible for booking the meeting is actually tied up at that point. I would ask permission. Again, permission is a really, asking for permission is a really attractive prospecting habit. I would ask permission from the prospect to proceed without the SDR. You want to make sure that the prospect feels in control, that they can dictate the meeting. And if they want to cancel the meeting because the SDR is tied up, then that's okay. You know, but if they, I've never seen it happen. Usually the prospects say, yeah, that's totally fine. You know, no problem. So I would say, hey, hey, Eric, I actually am going to be your point of contact anyway moving forward. So if it's okay with you, we can just go into the demo, and I'd like to get to know you a little more about your team. I heard the call earlier because I was using Chorus. I heard the call earlier of when Karina was talking to you, and so I'm up to speed on your account, and of course I know your company. You know, so if it's okay with you, we could just go ahead, and then if Karina frees up, she can join the call. Does that sound okay with you? So I, again, would ask for permission and basically set an agenda of you are fully caught up to speed, you do know their company, you did listen to the call, you know the context, you saw the paper trail, you know why Erica's on the phone, but you still want to ask permission if it's okay to go ahead and proceed with the call. In some case scenario, you know, that person, Eric in this case, is going to say like, hey, well, yeah, I really wanted to meet them, you know, and tell them a big congrats. Like, that was a great prospecting effort. I haven't seen anything like it. You know, it was a really, really great email that they sent me. And so I honestly wanted to jump on the phone and say so in front of them. So in that case scenario, this happens a lot, especially if you're doing personalized messaging. I know that sounds nuts, but I have spiffed my reps off of their prospects offering them a job and their prospects saying that was a great email and taking the meeting. So like if you're doing personalized messaging, you're going to get this a lot of your prospects are like, especially if you're selling into a sales or marketing ICP, because they know the rules of the game and how tough that is to do. And so if your prospects jump on the phone, I mean, we were getting anywhere from 3 to 4 as a team a day. So if your prospect says like, hey, that was a really great effort, and they did want to thank the SDR of like, hey, that was something that was really great, I would, if you're using a conversation intelligence software like Chorus, not to product pitch, but it does make it super easy. So I would say, if I was the account executive, I would say, thanks so much, Eric. That probably means the world to Karina. You have no idea. I'm going to go ahead and take this snippet, and I'm going to send it to Karina so that she can hear this. So you can have Karina reach out afterwards, you know, over email, over LinkedIn, if she wants to thank Eric for saying that. But basically, you want to let your prospect know that, number one, loud and clear, that they think that Karina did a great job, because that's half of it, is Eric wants to say good job in front of her boss because, you know, he knows how much that means. But number two, you'll even send the clip over that she can hear it so that Karina can reach out afterwards over LinkedIn, etc., if she wants to thank him. So that's it, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this session and want to hear more, go to flipthescript.co and you can see a bunch of different sales sessions I have available. And if you really like the session, go to LinkedIn and tag Flip the Script with your top 2 takeaways so I know what you want to hear more of. Either way, hope you have a great rest of your day. Toodaloo.